Warning team, this dungeon contains stodgy control systems, repetitive monochrome low-quality graphics, and esoteric puzzles. Caution is therefore advised. Step very carefully on your adventure, or it could all come to an end in a very grisly manner. Knightmare, for me, was absolutely unmissable children's television, up there with Bad Influence, Thundercats, and the Mysterious Cities of Gold. A game show at its heart, but dressed up with a Tolkien-esque lore, early CG smoke and mirrors, and hammy acting. Knightmare was catnip for nerds such as myself. To a kid, books were great, sure, but Ian Livingstone's Choose Your Adventure books were even better. You could do whatever you want. You could avoid that swamp and not get eaten by that bog beast. You could go and poke like a dragon in the eye. And that sort of concept was Knightmare, but on television. Your imagination realised. What a great idea it was. Shown on CITV from September 1987, over 8 series until its eventual demise in 1994, Knightmare was an innovative, unmissable slice of wonder in game show form. Do I religiously rush home to watch The Chase, or Pointless, or Who Wants to Be a Billionaire? No, I do not. And my opinion in life is unanimous and stuff, and so everyone thinks the way I do, but trust me, Knightmare is the most unmissable game show television of all time. The format was 4 lucky bastard children who weren't me would appear in Traegar's sanctum, and one would have to put a pudding bowl with horns on it on his noggin, and then he'd be thrown into a huge green screen warehouse that would be overlaid with CG for our eyes, while his crap tracksuit and shell-suited mates would steer him about and hopefully not walk him off of a cliff or into the tit of an actress dressed as a witch. What fabulous television that is. They were ultimately steered and shepherded away from walking into the warehouse walls by Traegar, a bearded lord in a Game of Thrones extras costume, played by Hugo Myatt. Myatt was crucial. He veritably chews the scenery off of its moorings, booming out instructions and advice while having to think on his feet if the children end up being a bunch of dim-witted chuckles.
I force Mildred, cease at once!
What a pro he is. Knightmare was bastard hard too. There are only 8 winners across the 8 series, and when someone won it, it was compelling schoolyard chat material for the next day, as much as, say, like an England World Cup win, or when that plane crashed in Emmerdale Farm. Despite the main character eating by putting food into a satchel rather than his mouth, Knightmare is thought well of by nerds of a certain age, and it nearly made a comeback in 2004, along with host Hugo Myatt, for a show called Knightmare VR, which unfortunately, after an unsuccessful pilot, was ultimately shelved. It did, though, have a one-off comeback in 2013, when YouTube had a Geek Week, and Myatt once again put on his old LARPing trousers again. Instead of children, the contestants were YouTube creators, including one Stuart Ashens.
Hello!
And they were assisted by Izzy Sooty, she out of Peep Show, and good old Dobby and Corfu 06. Let me chew on your weird hair. It has also made a comeback recently of sorts as a travelling show where members of the audience can indeed enjoy a bit of being in Knightmare, although Hugo Myatt isn't Traegar in this, so what's the point? I'm sure it's very good. Don't take my word on things, I haven't even seen it. How can I possibly judge it? Activision acquired the licence in 1987 and handed development duties to MD Software, who would later go on to do the Spectrum conversion of Last Ninja 2. The game is pretty obviously an adventure title. If it was a football game or an Operation Wolf first-person shoot-'em-up game with a light gun, someone would have done their job quite badly, and I'd hope they'd be sacked as a result. Your young adventurer, unclear there if he's dressed in a shell suit, but he's certainly got the helmet on, is trapped in a dungeon and he must attempt to escape, because there's probably all manner of things that a young man of his age should be avoiding in dungeons, such as, man-eating rats and, stabbings and probably paedophiles. They're in there for a reason. Let's be honest, Ian Watkins may be in that jail. Just like the TV show, he can make his escape by solving various puzzles, casting spells and answering real-world questions from rather inquisitive wall monsters. I got to admit, if I was an immobile wall monster who couldn't move at all, I'd spend a lot of time either wondering about 1980s Britain and wondering how it was possible to end my horrible, lifeless existence. It can't be fun being a sentient wall who has to wait for people to appear. Christ. But make haste, adventurer, because there's a candle burning down. So you've got to keep that butt moving, though I'm slightly disappointed it's not a ginger kid losing flesh and skull parts like the best health bar of all time in the heyday of the TV show. It was pretty grotesque for an 8-year-old to witness, I've got to admit. You start the game in a dungeon room with this miserable looking old codger. A chicken egg and whatever that weird ball is, which turns out is a rock. The door is locked. How on earth do you get out of this predicament? Well, the old man has a magic spade apparently stashed down his tattered trousers. You have to pair up a verb and a noun up there on that bit there to interact with this old coot and the objects in the room. These are the game mechanics. So first you need to take the food, give the food to the old man. He then takes it gladly, despite the fact that he saw you just pick it up off of the floor, not on like a plate or any tissue, just straight up off that floor. There's no bucket in here, and I doubt fantasy dungeons have cleaners, and the old boy looks like he's been here for some time, so I suspect that where that chicken egg was, there's fecal matter and urine all over that floor. Anyway, you give him the water, which the game doesn't tell you that you already had in your possession, and then you ask him for his magic spade. You then dig with the magic spade, and you find yourself a couple of rooms down with a couple of goons who attack you immediately, and you either panic and run down to the next screen, although there's no obvious reason from the off to run down to the next screen because there's no pictorial version of a door there. Alternatively, you can desperately fumble around with the horrible controls to throw a rock at one of them. This bit is the game's biggest failure. The control system is awful stuff. The verb and nouns are exactly the same no matter what room you're in. And you have to skip through all these different nouns of things you've either already encountered or won't encounter till the end of the game to find what you need and to take out these relentless guards and magic appearing trolls in the tight time limit. And it's one of the most frustrating experiences in Spectrum history. I did find out though afterwards you can type in the first initial of whatever item you want, so O for old man say, and it will bring it up, but that's my fault I guess. But it did ruin my experience before then. But I guess that's still my fault. But still, I don't think the controls are much cop. Quite why they couldn't make the items context sensitive to whatever room you're in my opinion, is a massive failure in the game design itself. Here is an interesting fact before we get to the next bit. The ZX Spectrum games Attic Attack and Dragon Talk were the inspiration behind the concept. Creator Tim Child had played these two games and conceived that the adventure nature of those two titles would make for a very good TV show, and so therefore he conceived this idea, and that's why we have Knightmare. So that's nice, isn't it? The Spectrum gave to the idea of Knightmare, and what an ouroboros loop of fun this has turned out to be. It's just a shame though that MD Software couldn't have played the likes of Attic Attack or Dragon Talk and used a simple control system like that I get the idea. The idea is obviously that they wanted to make a more thorough adventure, but their control system isn't up to task. So, unfortunately, you overreached, boys. Sorry, MD Software. And it's a shame, as the game is interesting and varied in its mechanics, and it's a tough but rewarding adventure. The graphics aren't pretty, really, and you better get used to stony dungeon walls, because unlike the TV show, that's all you're going to get. There's a nice bit of interaction with Treguard, and you can ask him for advice, along with his two Oracle buddies, who I'm not familiar with at all, Ronius and Bougain, who all look really similar, like they're the guys in the early series of Game of Thrones when you couldn't tell them apart because there were so many people with long hair and beards. Most of the time, they're really unhelpful though, but that is the way of us middle-aged men. Just leave us to it. We'll be doing whatever we want. It's overall fairly competent and a decent challenge, but I really did not enjoy wrestling with those awkward controls, and it ruined the game for me. Scores were varied from the magazines. Your Sinclair declared it as an efficient translation of the TV series, but too much of a halfway house between adventuring, intricacy and arcade action, and gave it a 7 out of 10. Crash thought it was beautifully presented, but too difficult to reward most players, and slapped a 62% on it. Sinclair user, though, must have inhaled a bit too much of the fumes from the stationary cupboard Tipex, stating it was an interesting and exciting game with something for everyone to get hooked on. A fast-moving game for part-time thinkers. Superb. They gave it a whopping perfect score of 10 out of 10. Are they okay? A Sinclair user okay? I don't think they're okay. And I guess that's that for this week. So I better say thanks, bye, and get you out of here.
Spellcasting. D.I.S.M.I.S.S.